The sky over Dubai shimmered with streaks of gold as the sun began to set behind the towering skyline. At the edge of the desert, surrounded by ornate white marble walls and palm trees lit with crystal lanterns, the palace of Sheikh Hamdan al-Rashid glowed like something out of a fantasy. But inside the palace grounds, the whispers of disbelief threatened to drown out the soft notes of the violin quartet playing by the grand staircase. Olivia Rose Hartfield, 19 years old, stepped onto the red-carpeted aisle. Her dress, an off-shoulder ivory gown encrusted with pearls and threaded with platinum silk, flowed behind her like a river of light. Her golden hair had been styled into an elegant chignon, a diamond tiara resting delicately atop her crown. She was beautiful, but she did not smile. Gasps fluttered like butterflies among the rows of guests, royals, oil tycoons, fashion icons, and journalists disguised as socialites. Is she really 19? This must be a publicity stunt. A marriage or a transaction. She could be his great-granddaughter. What's in it for her, or him? Whispers turned into speculation and speculation into stories. Outside the palace gates, paparazzi pressed against metal barricades. Helicopters hovered in the distance. The media circus spun headlines even before the vows were spoken. Billionaire Sheikh marries teen American in desert ceremony. From diner to dynasty, who is Olivia Hartfield? Gold, power, and mystery. The wedding everyone's talking about. As Olivia approached the altar, her hands trembled just slightly beneath her silk gloves. Her eyes scanned the sea of judgmental stares, then rested on the man who waited at the end of the aisle. Sheikh Hamdan al-Rashid stood tall, despite his 75 years. Clad in a flowing white robe embroidered with gold threads, he exuded quiet power. His eyes, the color of storm. Clouds watched Olivia not with hunger, but with a gaze filled with something far more unreadable. Regret, perhaps, or longing. His silver beard was neatly trimmed. Rings sparkled on his fingers. He did not smile either. When she reached him, he extended a hand. She placed hers in his. The imam read the vows in Arabic and English. Olivia nodded when it was her turn to agree. Her voice was barely a whisper. I do. A hush fell over the courtyard. Fireworks exploded in the distance, but the silence among the guests was louder than the celebration. Then came the moment that froze the evening in time. Sheikh Hamdan turned to one of his aides, who wheeled forward a velvet-draped cart. A hush turned into gasps as the cloth was removed, revealing a gold-inlaid chest. Slowly, Hamdan opened it. Inside was a trove of unimaginable wealth. Thousands of gold coins, diamond necklaces, a sapphire the size of a fist, antique royal brooches, and a set of keys resting atop a platinum envelope. For you, the sheikh said softly, handing Olivia the envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. It was the deed to a mansion in the heart of Paris, already in her name. Her eyes widened, not in greed, but in disbelief. Cameras flashed. Whispers turned to shouts. She's set for life. Is this a dowry or a bribe? What kind of love needs that much gold? Olivia looked around. For a moment she seemed to be somewhere else entirely. Her smile faltered. Her lips trembled. Everyone expected joy, even smugness. But what they saw in her expression instead was something none of them could explain. Fear, and something deeper. A sorrow she hadn't signed up for. The couple turned and walked hand in hand toward the Sar ballroom. Music resumed. Champagne poured. A drone display in the sky formed the words, "Forever begins tonight." But behind those palace walls, where the media could no longer reach and the guests could only guess, something else was beginning, and whatever happened behind those closed doors that night shocked everyone, especially Olivia. Long before the silk gowns, the gold chess, and the world's cameras, Olivia Hartfield lived a very different life. The small town of Larkhill, Ohio, wasn't the kind of place you left. It was the kind of place you got stuck in, if you weren't careful. 2 traffic lights, 1 gas station, 1 high school, and a lot of dreams that evaporated like morning fog once reality set in. Olivia had been different. At least, she thought she had. She was the kind of girl who spent hours in the library, who tutored classmates for free, who wanted more than cornfields and minimum wage. Her dream? To study journalism at NYU, to write stories that made people feel, to tell the truth. But dreams don't always stand a chance against bad timing. Her father, a quiet man who once owned a modest carpentry business, had poured everything into expanding his workshop. When the market crashed, so did his clients. And his spirit. Bills stacked up. The bank came for their house. He started drinking again. Her mother, sweet, soft-spoken Caroline, was diagnosed with lupus the same year. The medical bills hit, like a second storm. Insurance only covered so much. Olivia watched her mother grow smaller, paler, weaker, and her father grow colder. She had earned a partial scholarship to NYU. She even had a roommate picked out. But on a cold spring morning, a rejection letter from a loan office and a hospital invoice waiting in the mailbox crushed what was left of her future. Olivia dropped out before she ever arrived. At 18, she picked up the graveyard shift at Marcy's Diner, flipping pancakes for truckers and watching her dreams bleed out in the grease trap. Then one rainy night, everything changed. Woman walked into the diner wearing an emerald green scarf, a cream-colored abaya, and the kind of elegance that made her look like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, not under flickering fluorescent lights with the smell of burnt toast in the air. She took a booth by the window, ordered black tea and eggs, and watched Olivia closely, not in a creepy way, but with curiosity, even kindness. Her name was Fatima Al-Darzi. Over the next 2 weeks, she returned almost every night, sitting in the same booth, always asking for Olivia's section. At first, Olivia was wary, but Fatima was generous with tips, spoke softly, and always asked how her mother was doing. "How do you know about my mom?" Olivia asked one night. Fatima smiled. "You always check your phone after every order, and your eyes never stop worrying." Something about the way she said it made Olivia want to cry. Instead, she laughed it off. "Yeah, well, life's expensive." Then, as if testing the waters, Fatima leaned forward and said, "There's a family I work with, in Dubai. Very wealthy, but very private. They're looking for someone kind, good with children, humble. Would you be interested?" Olivia blinked. To do what? Help raise a little boy, read to him, keep him company, live in comfort, get paid very well, enough to help your mother. Her heart pounded. This is out of nowhere. "No strings," Fatima promised. "Just opportunity." Olivia didn't sleep that night. She stared at the ceiling of the one-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother, listening to the rhythm of the oxygen machine wheezing in the next room. The cracked ceiling tiles, the overdue rent notice on the fridge, the echo of her father slamming the door earlier that night. It all painted a future she didn't want. Was this her escape? She had no passport, no international experience, and she'd only just met this woman. But when she checked online the next morning, Fatima Al-Darzi was real, a humanitarian, a woman with links to the royal household of Dubai. Not a scam, not a lie. A window, a doorway. Olivia sat on her mother's bedside and asked, "If I could help by leaving, would you forgive me?" Her mother, barely awake, cupped Olivia's cheek. "If it saves you, baby, go." Within a week, the documents were arranged, passports, visas, medical clearance. Fatima moved quickly but legally, thoroughly, respectfully. At the airport, Olivia looked like any other backpacker, except her luggage was filled with cheap clothes, expired dreams, and one photo of her mother holding her as a baby. She had no idea what awaited her on the other side of the ocean, only that the alternative was slow decay. As the plane rose above Ohio's gray skies, Olivia watched the clouds part and whispered, "Please let this be the right thing." In her chest, a war raged between guilt and hope. She had told no one but her mother. Not even her old best friend, not even her father. The town would talk, she knew that. Call her impulsive, reckless, desperate. And maybe she was all those things. But she was also out of options. When the flight attendant offered her champagne, she declined. When the man next to her asked where she was going, she only said, "To work." She touched the gold envelope Fatima had given her, her visa, contract, and a handwritten note. Be open to unexpected roads. They sometimes lead home. Olivia didn't understand what that meant. But by the time she touched down in Dubai, stepped into the heat of the desert sun, and was met by a Rolls-Royce with tinted windows and a driver in a black suit, she knew one thing for sure. Her life would never be the same again. The gates of the Al Rashid estate opened with an almost mechanical hush, revealing a world that didn't seem entirely real. Olivia stared out the tinted window of the Rolls-Royce as the car coasted along a winding marble driveway, flanked by towering palm trees and reflecting pools that shimmered under the Arabian sun. Ahead rose a mansion. Not a house, not even a palace, but a cathedral of wealth. Walls etched in gold leaf, balconies carved with ivory lattice. A fountain shaped like a falcon stood in the center courtyard, spouting crystal-clear water into a mosaic basin. She stepped out, shielding her eyes. The heat kissed her skin, dry but somehow soothing. The air smelled like jasmine and oud. Fatima met her at the grand entrance. No luggage porters, no chaos. Everything was controlled, elegant. "This way, Olivia," Fatima said with her usual graceful calm. Inside, the floors gleamed with Italian marble veined in silver. The ceilings soared like museum domes. Walls were lined with ancient calligraphy, velvet tapestries, and paintings that looked like they'd been plucked from museums. No TV, no noise, just silence, quiet enough to hear the ticking of a nearby grandfather clock. A butler in a cream robe offered Olivia chilled rosewater in a cut glass goblet. She sipped it, more out of reflex than thirst. The sweetness lingered strangely on her tongue. "This isn't just a family home, is it?" she whispered. Fatima turned to her, her expression unreadable. "No, it's more than that. This is the sheikh's world, and he requested your presence personally." Olivia blinked. "What do you mean he requested me?" Fatima looked at her carefully. "He saw your photo, the one in the passport file. He said you reminded him of someone. He asked if I could bring you." That didn't sit right. Olivia's fingers curled around the goblet. "Is this still about being a nanny?" "Yes," Fatima answered, but her voice carried something under it. "But perhaps it could become more, in time, if you're open." Before Olivia could respond, the towering mahogany doors ahead creaked open. A man stood inside the room beyond, his back to them, Sheikh Hamdan al-Rashid. He wore a simple white kandura, no crown, no entourage, just a man looking out through a giant stained glass window at his garden beyond. When he turned, Olivia braced herself, for arrogance, for condescension, for that too familiar male entitlement. Instead, she saw sorrow. He was old, yes. Wrinkles folded around eyes the color of distant storms. A trimmed silver beard, posture, still proud but softened by age. Yet there was a presence about him. Not dominance, dignity, quiet power, thoughtfulness. "Miss Olivia," he said, bowing slightly. "Welcome to my home." His English was perfect, British tinged. His voice, low and warm, reminded her of someone reading a bedtime story. She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you, sir." He smiled gently. "You may call me Hamdan if you like." Over the next few weeks, things moved strangely, slowly, softly. There was no child to watch, no playroom, no toys. Instead, Olivia was given her own private suite, larger than her entire apartment back in Ohio. She dined with the sheikh at long tables covered in gold-threaded linen. They drank tea in a sunlit library where the air smelled of cedarwood and old parchment. He never touched her, never pressured her. Instead, he asked questions. "What do you love to read? Why did you want to be a writer? What does your mother mean to you?" And he listened, intently. He gifted her books. A first edition of Hemingway's A Movable Feast, a signed memoir by a female war correspondent, a collection of Rumi's poetry in leather binding. She didn't know what was happening. It wasn't romance, but it wasn't employment either. It was something in between. She asked Fatima once in hushed tones, "What does he want from me?" Fatima gave a soft, sad smile. "Maybe not what you think. He's a man who has lost a lot. Sometimes company is the only thing that keeps a man alive." Still, something lingered, unspoken, in every glance, every pause between words, a gentle ache in the air. And then, one evening, as they watched the desert sunset bleed into the horizon, from a marble balcony he said it, "I want to marry you, Olivia." She froze. He didn't reach for her hand, didn't plead, just stood calmly beside her, his eyes on the fading sun. "You don't have to love me," he said. "You don't have to pretend. Just be my wife, until the end. I'm not long for this world, but I would like to leave it beside someone who doesn't see me as a monster." Olivia stared at him, speechless. His voice softened. "You'll be taken care of. Your mother. Your future. You'll never have to work again. You'll have peace. All I ask is your honesty and your presence." That night she didn't sleep. She thought of her mother in the hospital, of the bills piling up, of the way Hamdan had looked at her. Not like a possession, but like a question. By morning she answered it. Yes, but not for love. For survival. For duty. For the guilt of leaving her mother behind. What Olivia didn't realize, what she couldn't yet understand, was that her yes had unlocked far more than a marriage. It had awakened secrets buried in golden walls. The wedding had ended, but the silence afterward was louder than the ceremony itself. Olivia stood just inside the towering doors of the royal suite, alone. Behind her, the enormous doors clicked shut with finality, sealing her inside the room, where she was now, officially, the wife of Sheikh Hamdan al-Rashid. She trembled, not from fear of him, but of the unknown. The room was unlike anything she had ever seen. Ceilings painted like the night sky. Curtains made of velvet the color of dried roses. Candlelight flickered along golden sconces, casting shadows that danced across the marbled floor. A canopied bed stood at the center like an altar, its silk sheets untouched. She wasn't sure what would happen. She had married a man 5 decades, older than her, out of desperation, out of kindness, out of guilt, but not out of love. When the adjoining door opened, Olivia's breath caught in her throat. Hamdan entered quietly, no ceremonial garb now, just a simple robe and soft slippers. He looked tired. Not physically, but spiritually. Like someone who had been waiting years to speak a truth but never found the words. He didn't approach her. Instead, he turned and walked to the far end of the room, to a wall she hadn't noticed before. It was carved with strange, swirling patterns, and in the center was a bronze lion's head. He pressed a palm to it. A soft, mechanical click echoed through the room. The wall shuddered, and then slowly, it opened. A hidden vault. "Come," he said softly, beckoning with just his eyes. Nervous, Olivia stepped forward. The vault's interior was softly lit, nothing harsh or theatrical. What she saw inside wasn't piles of gold, or diamonds, though there were those too. No, what caught her breath were the human things, a hand-painted carousel horse, a tiny pair of red ballet slippers in a glass case, dozens of framed sketches, drawings, done in crayon and watercolor, photographs of a young girl with almond-shaped eyes and sun-dappled hair. Next to them sat a chest, not jeweled, but old and wooden, worn at the corners. He opened it. Inside were hundreds of letters, some sealed, some faded, some barely legible. "From tear stains, these," Hamdan said, voice trembling, "are not gifts for a bride. They were meant for my daughter." Olivia froze. Her heart stumbled inside her chest. She died 20 years ago. A child. Taken too soon. I have never spoken of her. Not even to Fatima. He reached into the chest and pulled out a small oil painting. Olivia gasped. It was her. No, it looked like her, almost identically. The same bone structure, the same long lashes, the same soft jawline. She was 6 when this was painted, he whispered. You are the only one I've seen. Who looks like her? The only one. Her knees weakened. She gripped the wall to steady herself. I searched the world, Hamdan continued, not for a wife, not for a companion, but for her, or someone who could carry her memory, someone I could protect, even if it was too late. When Fatima showed me your photograph, I felt her heartbeat again. He looked at Olivia, not with desire, but with the aching grief of a man who had spent 2 decades in a prison made of loss. I never meant to deceive you. I would never touch you, I swore to God, but I could not let you slip away, not when I saw her in your eyes. Olivia's throat tightened. The room tilted. Everything. The marriage, the gifts, the silence at the wedding. It all made sense now. She wasn't his bride. She was a stand-in for the ghost of his daughter. She didn't speak. Couldn't. Her legs buckled, and the darkness rushed in. The last thing she saw was Hamdan rushing forward, not to claim her, but to catch her. She woke hours later, in a different room. A quiet room. The palace doctor was checking her vitals. Fatima sat by her side, eyes glossy with concern. Is this real? Olivia asked, her voice cracking. Fatima nodded. He has mourned her every day. You are not her, but you brought a piece of her back. That's all he wanted. The media waited outside the palace that morning, cameras ready, pens sharp, expecting headlines, drama, a scandalous consummation of wealth and youth. But no announcement came. No press release, no photos, just silence. Behind golden doors, the world's most bizarre marriage was not unfolding with passion, but with grief. And in the heart of a young woman who had come seeking survival, something began to shift. Pity? Yes. But also compassion. What would you do if someone saw their lost child in your face? What if all they wanted was to say goodbye, through you? What Olivia didn't yet know was that this was only the beginning, because grief doesn't sleep. It haunts, and some secrets even, in vaults of gold, refuse to stay buried. When Olivia awoke, the light filtering through the curtains was soft, golden, like honey. The palace was quiet, save for the distant sound of birds in the garden beyond. She sat up slowly, her head still heavy with the weight of the previous night. Then she heard it, a voice, low, steady, broken with emotion, reciting something in English. She followed the sound, barefoot, down a short hallway lined with silk tapestries. It led to a private study, its door slightly ajar. Inside sat Sheikh Hamdan, alone, in a high-backed chair. A single photograph rested in his lap. He was reading a letter aloud, his voice cracking. To my dearest Layla, if I don't make it home tonight, I want you to remember what you taught me, to be patient, to be kind, and to never stop believing in light even when it's gone. He paused, blinked, then folded the paper with reverence. His hands, aged and veined, trembled as he picked up the photo beside him. He didn't flinch when he saw Olivia standing in the doorway. Come, he said gently. There's something you should see. She stepped inside, unsure if she was ready. He held out the photo. It was a girl, youthful, radiant, long wavy hair, sparkling eyes that mirrored Olivia's own. She stood beside a horse, laughing. A desert wind lifted her dress, like a sail. She was 18, he said. We were returning from Morocco. A truck ran a red light. She died instantly. Her mother never recovered. I buried 2 hearts that year. Silence hung heavy in the air. Olivia sat beside him. Her fingers touched the edge of the photo. She looked just like me, she whispered. Hamdan nodded, then looked her directly in the eyes. But she wasn't you, and you are not her. I know that now. The words struck her more deeply than she expected. Then why? Why did you marry me? He sighed, eyes clouding. Because I thought for a moment that I could rewrite fate, that I could protect what I lost even in illusion. But I see now, illusion is a dangerous comfort. You are not her, Olivia, and I won't ask you to pretend anymore. She waited for tension, for awkwardness, for some subtle manipulation. But there was none. Only grief, laid bare like open pages in a diary. Over the weeks that followed, something changed. Hamdan kept his distance, but not coldly. Instead, he invited Olivia into his world in another way. He taught her Arabic, beginning with poetry. He handed her books on diplomacy, politics, and international trade. You should know how the world works, he said, so no one can ever make you feel small again. They had long breakfasts in the Rose Courtyard, where he quizzed her on financial strategy between sips of cardamom coffee. He never touched her, never intruded. But he never ignored her either. He listened, truly listened, when she spoke about her mother, about Ohio, about how she used to write short stories in the back of her math notebook. He smiled when she made him laugh. He offered silence when she cried. At night she wrote in her journal, pages filling fast. I thought I came here for money, she penned one evening, her hand trembling slightly. But I found something else. A father, a protector. Not the kind I expected, not the kind anyone would believe, but the kind who sees you. Not for what you were forced to become, but for what you still dream to be. Her guilt began to lift, not all at once, but in pieces. She realized she wasn't trapped. She was transforming. She had boarded a jet months ago to escape a dying life. She had stepped into a palace expecting a cage of gold. But now, she stood in the center of a garden, learning to speak in a language that once belonged to a ghost. And though the world outside whispered scandal, inside, something sacred was being restored. Not a romance, not a transaction, but something purer. Two broken souls finding unexpected peace in each other's presence. The call came just after dawn. Olivia, wrapped in a silk robe and sipping tea by the terrace, didn't recognize the number. But she answered anyway, a static pause, then, Olivia? It's your dad. Her heart skipped. It had been months. Too long. His voice wasn't warm. It was rushed, urgent. I saw you on the news. That wedding. My God, you married him? She didn't answer. We're drowning here, he continued, his voice already shifting to desperation. The bank took the car. Your mother's medicine, it's not covered. We need help. You can help. Olivia's silence stretched. Then came the one sentence that cut deeper than the rest. You owe us. She hung up, trembling. Later that afternoon, Hamdan's lawyer, a cold and formal man in a gray suit, met her in the palace library. He placed a leather folder on the table. This is Sheikh Hamdan's inheritance clause, he said, without fanfare. He requested you know the terms. Olivia hesitated before opening it. If Olivia remains his legal wife for exactly 1 year, she inherits full ownership of all listed estates, assets, and holdings, including offshore accounts and private properties. If she cheats or divorces before 1 year is complete, she receives nothing. Her breath caught. It wasn't just money. It was a kingdom. The room blurred, and then came the whispers. She passed the Rose Courtyard later that day and heard voices, low, tense. Fatima and a younger man she hadn't seen before. Tall, angular features. Piercing, eyes full of venom. Zaid, Hamdan's nephew. He's gone mad, Zaid hissed. Marrying a girl from a diner, an American? This is not grief. It's disgrace. She has been kind to him, Fatima defended. He is healing. Let him be. Zaid scoffed. Kind? She's playing him. Wait until she gets her name on the papers. She'll vanish and sell the estate to the highest bidder. He turned, locking eyes with Olivia through the vines. That evening, he approached her in the West Wing alone. You don't belong here, he said flatly. I didn't ask to be here. No, he said with a smirk. But you stayed. He handed her a card, black, embossed in gold. A private bank in Zurich. My offer is simple. Divorce the old man. I'll deposit triple whatever he promised. You walk away free. Young. Rich. No guilt. He gets to believe his fantasy, and you get your life back. Olivia stared at him. And all I have to do is betray him. Zaid leaned in. No. You'd be waking up. You think he loves you? He loves who you look like. He doesn't. See you, only a ghost. He turned and walked away. That night, Olivia sat alone on the balcony, staring at the darkening sky. The walls around her shimmered with wealth, gold fixtures, hand-woven rugs, ancient vases from Persia. She could have it all. Or she could leave, with nothing. She picked up her journal. When I left Ohio, I was just surviving. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. Hamdan gave me kindness when I had none left to give, but he also gave me a choice I never asked for. Tears dotted the page. I came here to save my family. But who saves me? She closed the journal and held it close. Tomorrow, she would have to decide, not just who she was, but who she wanted to become. The first sign was small, a missed breakfast. Hamdan, who never skipped his morning tea in the garden, didn't appear. By noon, Fatima found him slumped in his chair, breathing shallowly, eyes unfocused. Within the hour, the palace was flooded, with doctors, and hushed urgency. Olivia watched from the hallway, numb, as machines beeped, and a stretcher was wheeled through marble corridors that had always felt eternal. He was taken to a private hospital on the outskirts of the city. Only a few staff followed. Olivia insisted on riding with him. In the hospital room, sterile and cold, she sat by his bed. His skin had grown pale, his fingers skeletal. He struggled to stay awake. It's nothing, he rasped the first night. But by the third day, his voice had faded to a whisper. The doctors were frank. It was his heart. Irreversible. Days, not weeks. Olivia didn't leave his side. She read to him, excerpts from the books he'd once read to her. Rumi, Khalil Gibran. Stories about longing, forgiveness, and the vast spaces between souls. When he slept, she brushed his hair gently with her fingers. When he woke, she helped him sip water piece by piece. One morning, as dawn crept in like a silk veil, he opened his eyes and looked at her, not with the distant sadness of a grieving father, but with full presence. You gave me peace in my final days, he whispered. She leaned in, her tears already forming. I thought I rescued you, he continued, his hand tightening around hers. But you rescued me. Her lips trembled. You weren't supposed to leave yet. A faint smile. None of us ever are. His breathing slowed. His eyes lingered on her and then closed. A single monitor beeped its final note. Olivia's sob tore through the silence. She clutched, his hand tighter, refusing to let go. The man the world mocked her for marrying, the man they called old, foolish, delusional, was gone, and in his place remained only the warmth of a soul that had changed her. She wept, not for the inheritance, not for the life she'd lived in luxury, but for a man who, in his final days, had taught her what it meant to be truly seen. The palace was draped in white silk, not for celebration, but mourning. Dignitaries came and went. Reporters hovered outside the gates. The headlines buzzed. The young widow of the desert. But Olivia stayed silent through it all. When the lawyer returned, this time it was with no contract, only a velvet folder and a sealed envelope. He sat across from her in the garden, the place Hamdan once taught her the word for jasmine. The sheikh's final will, he said softly. He left no disputes, no loopholes. It's all yours. He opened the folder, listing properties, investments, accounts, castles, a yacht, paintings that once belonged to emperors. But Olivia barely looked. She held the envelope instead, her fingers tracing her name written in his flowing script. She opened it, Inside, on a single page, were his final words to her. "My dearest Olivia, if you are reading this, then the wind has taken me where I can no longer speak. But you must know this. The world gave me gold. It gave me power. But you gave me peace. Do not waste your life guarding what I left behind. Build something from your dreams, not my wealth. And if you ever miss me, plant a rose in the sand. I'll be there." Olivia pressed the paper to her heart. She returned to the U.S. 6 weeks later, not in silence, but without spectacle. She sold many of the sheikh's assets, keeping only the rose garden estate and a single painting of his daughter. With the funds, she founded the Layla Foundation, a global education program for underprivileged women and girls, focusing on leadership, literacy, and independence. The first center opened in her hometown in Ohio, where her name no longer sparked whispers of scandal, but awe. Her parents came to see her at the ribbon cutting. They asked for forgiveness, their voices full of tears. She embraced them. "I forgive you," she said, "but I'm no longer the girl who needs saving." They wept. She smiled, gently, and walked back into the building filled with young women whose dreams now had a door. The Dubai sun rose quietly over the desert, its golden fingers brushing the tops of the palace domes. At the edge of a private garden, where jasmine vines curled around white marble walls, stood a small, simple gravestone. No title, just a name, Hamdan al-Rashid, and beneath it, the inscription he once whispered, "Plant a rose in the sand. I'll be there." Olivia knelt in front of it, dressed not in black, but in a flowing ivory scarf. In her hands, she held a bouquet of white roses, his favorite. Silent, she laid them down one by one until the grave looked like a cradle of light. No reporters followed her this time, no headlines, just wind. She closed her eyes, and then softly, her voice rose, like memory carried on wind. They said, "I was a scandal, a gold digger, a girl who sold her youth for comfort." They didn't see the nights I sat beside a man who read me poetry while dying slowly. They didn't see the kindness behind his grief, or the strength behind my smile. A long pause. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. He never touched me, but he held my pain like it was his own. He gave me nothing I asked for, but everything I didn't know I needed. She stood slowly, brushing her hand against the stone. Love was never what they thought. It wasn't fairy tales. It wasn't passion or rings. It was dignity, respect. Two broken people holding each other up until one could no longer stand. She looked up at the endless desert, a soft smile. Then, barefoot, she stepped away from the grave, the white scarf trailing behind her like a whisper. She walked toward the sunrise, the dunes glowing gold before her. Alone, but never empty again.